If you clicked on this video, chances are you were born in the late 90s or early 2000s, and like me, you probably spent way too many nights reading creepypastas and scaring the life out of yourself. Stories like Jeff the Killer, Smile Dog, Slender Man, The Russian Sleep Experiment, Ben Drowned, Laughing Jack, Sonic.exe, Eyeless Jack, and so many more had a chokehold on kids and teenagers back in the early 2010s. But what's wild is that the impact these stories had on internet culture isn't just nostalgia, it's history. The rise of creepypasta shaped how we experience online horror, and their influence still lingers today. Before creepypastas were even a concept, the early internet was already home to digital campfire stories, eerie tales shared across message boards, forums, and personal blogs. One of the earliest and most influential examples emerged in 2001, Ted the Caver, a series of unnerving blog entries documenting one man's descent into an uncharted cave. As the updates continued, the posts grew more and more disturbing, blurring the line between fiction and reality. Today, it's widely recognized as one of the first true creepypastas, even before the term existed. The word creepypasta wouldn't appear until around 2007, when users on 4chan began to use it as a fusion of creepy and copypasta, the latter term referring to blocks of text that were copied and pasted repeatedly across the internet, stories and jokes that spread like digital folklore. Some of the earliest creepypastas to gain tractions included Username 666, Smile.jpg, Barbie.avi, and Have You Seen This Man, among many others. By 2008, the community had grown large enough to spawn its own dedicated hub, Creepypasta.com. What followed is often described as the golden age of creepypasta, spanning roughly from 2007 to 2012, with a second wave of stories like Tiki Toby and posts on r/NoSleep carrying the torch through the mid-2010s. Over time, the genre's popularity began to wane, but its influence never truly disappeared. Nearly 2 decades later, creepypasta's DNA can still be seen in modern horror, from YouTube ARGs and indie games to online horror subcultures built on mystery and fear. So let's take a closer look at some of the most influential creepypastas of all time and how they changed the internet forever. Slender Man, one of the most iconic creepypastas ever created. But where did it all begin? On June 8, 2009, a Something Awful forum user named Victor Surge, real name Eric Knudsen, entered a simple Photoshop contest. His submission? 2 eerie black and white photos of children, with something tall lurking in the background. A faceless figure in a black suit, impossible, unnerving, and yet strangely believable. The first image was captioned, "We didn't want to go, we didn't want to kill them," but its persistent silence and outstretched arms horrified and comforted us at the same time. 1983, photographer unknown, presumed dead. The second, one of 2 recovered photographs from the Sterling City Library blaze, notable for being taken the day 14 children vanished, and for what is referred as the Slender Man. Deformities cited as film defects by officials. Fire at library occurred 1 week later. Actual photograph confiscated as evidence. 1986, photographer Mary Thomas, missing since June 13, 1986. It was simple, but it hit the internet like wildfire. Slender Man quickly became the perfect modern monster. He stood impossibly tall, 7 to 9 feet of faceless horror in a suit and tie. He moved silently through the woods, stalking anyone who dared to notice him. And those who got too close were said to suffer from slender sickness, paranoia, hallucinations, nightmares, and sudden unexplained nosebleeds. Just 12 days later, on June 20th, 2009, a YouTube channel named Marble Hornets uploaded the first episode of what would become the most influential web series of all time. The series follows a man named Jay Merrick who begins reviewing old tapes from a cancelled student film, only to uncover a disturbing presence known as the Operator, a tall, faceless entity in a suit. Sound familiar? Marble Hornets exploded in popularity, turning Slender Man from a creepy image on a forum into a full-blown internet legend. Fans began flooding the web with their own stories, art, and videos, each adding a new layer to the growing mythology. By 2011, Slender Man had stepped into gaming. An indie developer known as the Green Meteor Team released the first ever Slender Man game, a tense, puzzle-driven experience that let players feel what it was like to be haunted by the faceless man himself. Then came 2012, the game Slender, the 8-pane just changed internet horror forever. The game was everywhere. YouTubers like Markiplier and PewDiePie made it viral overnight. Major news outlets covered it, and suddenly Slender Man wasn't just an internet story, he was a global phenomenon. But at the height of his fame, the story took a dark turn. In 2014, a horrifying crime in Waukesha, Wisconsin blurred the line between fiction and reality. Two 12-year-old girls, Anissa Wire and Morgan Geyser, lured their friend into the woods and stabbed her 19 times, all to appease Slender Man. They told police they believed he was real, that failing to serve him would bring death to their families. Miraculously, their victim survived, crawling to a nearby road where she was found by a passing cyclist. Both girls were later convicted and sent to mental health institutions, one sentenced to 25 years, the other to 40. Anissa Wire was released in 2021, Morgan Geyser followed in 2025. As I was working on this video, new information regarding Morgan Geyser came out. In the video I said Morgan and Anissa were both released from mental health institutions, which was true for Anissa, who now resides in the care of her father, where she is not allowed internet access outside his home, and the Department of Corrections monitors her internet access. She is also subjected to 24/7 GPS tracking and is mandated to continue psychiatric treatment. While Geyser, on the other hand, didn't have it so simple, because in 2024 she was denied early release due to one of two court-appointed psychologists claiming in a 2022 evaluation that she was faking her psychotic symptoms. Why? Because Geyser claimed that she wanted to avoid being released to her father, who she claimed abused her. Later in 2025, she was released from the Winnebago Mental Health Institution after expert testimony claimed she had made noticeable progress and was no longer considered a safety risk. But she wasn't really released because the judge ordered Wisconsin's Department of Health Services to house Geyser in a group home as a condition of her release. Well, maybe that wasn't the best idea, because on November 22nd, 2025, Geyser had managed to remove her monitoring bracelet and leave the group home. About 24 hours later, police found her sleeping outside a gas station in Posen, Illinois. But she wasn't alone. With her was 43-year-old Chad Mecca. They were both apprehended, and later when questioned why she ran away, Geyser said she was upset that Chad was not able to visit her. As of today, Mecca is free and received misdemeanor citations for criminal trespassing and obstructing identification. And Geyser is now back in the Winnebago Mental Health Institute. The Waukesha case marked the beginning of the end. Public perception of Slender Man changed overnight, from internet folklore to a symbol of moral panic. Sony attempted to revive the myth in 2018 with a Slender Man movie, but the backlash was immediate. Even the father of one of the Waukesha girls publicly commended the film's release. And when Slender Man's copyright was eventually transferred to Mythology Entertainment, new stories and games became almost impossible to make. The legend, once fueled by community creativity, was suddenly chained down by corporate ownership. Today, Slender Man stands as a relic of a different internet, a time when imagination spread faster than fear, and a single eerie image could change online culture forever. For better or for worse, Slender Man will always remain one of the most haunting and unforgettable stories the internet has ever told. Everyone knows Disney and of course the most iconic character, Mickey Mouse. But do you remember Mouse, one of the internet's earliest and eeriest creepypastas centered around the beloved character? Back on November 25th, 2009, a strange YouTube video titled Mouse, Unseen Freaky Footage was uploaded by the user Neck1. Its description laid out a long, chilling, and very obviously fabricated backstory of the animation. Here's a short version. It claimed that a lost Mickey Mouse cartoon from the 1930s, supposedly named mouse.avi, contained disturbing extended footage, warped visuals, horrifying audio, and even scenes of Mickey's face slowly falling apart. According to the legend, one person who watched the full version went insane and ultimately took their own life. The video itself begins with eerie piano banging and a loop of Mickey walking past the same 6 buildings wearing a deeply depressed expression. This continues for about 2 minutes until the screen suddenly fades to black, text appears reading. After a cut cut to black, it stayed like that until the 6th minute before going back. It was different this time. When the footage returns, the audio has changed. Instead of piano notes, you hear footsteps and something else, a low, wet, gurgling kind of cry. As the video progresses, the murmur grows louder and more frantic. The background begins to warp as the buildings bend and twist into a nightmare landscape. Mickey's expression slowly morphs into an unsettling, obscure sneer. The distortion builds and builds until everything is violently twisting out of shape. Then around the 6-minute mark, the screen cuts to black again, and this time, Russian text appears. It isn't proper Russian, but the closest translation is, "The visions of hell bring their viewers back inside." And the video ends with this. While not the first creepypasta ever made, Mouse is widely considered the forefather of the entire lost episode genre, inspiring countless creepypastas, YouTube series, and internet horror projects. It cemented itself as a piece of early internet legend, a disturbing relic that helped define creepypasta history. I'm sure everybody has heard of Jeff the Killer, but if you haven't, here's a quick recap. Jeff the Killer tells the story of a teenage boy named Jeff who, after a violent encounter with bullies, is set on fire and left horribly disfigured. When he finally sees his reflection, pale skin, burned eyelids, and that haunting grin, something inside him breaks. He carves a smile into his cheeks, murders his family, and disappears into the night. From then on, he's said to creep into homes, whispering 2 chilling words before striking: "Go to sleep." Now looking back, the story itself isn't exactly a masterpiece. Even fans admit it's clunky and full of cliches. But the story isn't what made Jeff iconic. What really gave Jeff the Killer his staying power was the image. That single photo, that ghostly wide-eyed grin, is what burned itself into the internet's memory. And over a decade later, the mystery behind that image is still unsolved. Let's rewind to where it all began. On June 10th, 2008, a user on Newgrounds named Killer Jeff, better known as Seswar, posted the first known mention of Jeff the Killer. But this wasn't the go-to-sleep story we all know. Instead, it was more like an urban legend ritual, something you'd find whispered on old message boards. And yes, the infamous Jeff the Killer image appeared in that post. A few years later, the more familiar version of the story was uploaded to Creepypasta.com, and from there, it exploded. But almost immediately, people began asking the same question: where did that image come from? In 2015, Seswar was interviewed by YouTuber Scare Theater and finally addressed the image's origins. He claimed he made it himself using a white latex mask, plastic eyes, and a rubber material to simulate blinking. It sounded plausible, but it wasn't true. Because not long after, a strange YouTube video surfaced titled NNN Special Broadcast. It had been uploaded all the way back in 2007, a full year before Seswar's post. And around the 4-minute mark, there it was, the Jeff the Killer face. This single discovery shattered the original story and suggested something new, that Jeff's origins might actually be Japanese. The theory gained even more traction in 2018 when a 4chan user discovered an earlier version of the image on a Japanese site called paya.cc, posted in 2005 by a user named Mr. Omega Bolt. Hidden in the image's metadata was a name: Pretty Face. Some believe this might have been Jeff's original title, possibly inspired by the Japanese urban legend of the slit-mouthed woman. The hunt for the original photo became one of the most famous lost media searches in internet history. At one point, a $10,000 bounty was even offered to anyone who could find the original source, and recently even bumped up to $15,000. But to this day, the image remains lost. Jeff's influence didn't stop online. In April of 2017, a 14-year-old named Donovan Nicholas stabbed and shot the woman he called his mother, Heidi Faye Taylor. When he called 911, he told the dispatcher, "I swear it wasn't me, it was Jeff. Jeff is inside of me." He was arrested and served time until his release in 2023 on his 21st birthday with no restrictions. A deeply tragic case, and my condolences go out to Heidi and her family. Jeff the Killer began as a simple creepypasta, a piece of internet horror fiction. But what it became was something much bigger, a story that blurred the line between fiction, obsession, and digital myth. It spawned one of the most intensive lost media hunts ever recorded, inspired countless fan stories and art, and even left a mark on real life in ways that no one could have predicted. And how those legends sometimes escape the screen. And that wraps up our look into the eerie world of creepypasta, stories that started as simple posts on the internet and grew into global cultural icons. From Slenderman's faceless presence to the disturbing mystery behind Suicide Mouse, to the infamous grin of Jeff the Killer, these tales have shaped online horror in ways no one could have predicted. Whether you see them as digital folklore, modern day campfire stories, or just creative nightmares, there's no denying their impact on the internet and on all of us who've gone down a late night rabbit hole. If you enjoyed this deep dive into creepypasta culture, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more horror analysis, and let me know in the comments which legends you want covered next. Thanks for watching, and remember, what lives on the internet doesn't always stay fictional. Sleep tight.